Writer-director Celine Song's feature debut, Past Lives, was easily one of the most impactful and profound pieces of cinema I've experienced in recent years. It is a beautiful personal examination on love and relationship, and it asks us to reconcile with the fact that we may not fully ever know somebody because we don't have a complete overlap in shared lived experiences. So suffice it to say, I had some high expectations when I saw she was coming out with a new film, and when I saw all the marketing for Materialists start to trickle out and it looked, talked, walked like a rom-com, I was a little taken aback. I love romantic comedies and absolutely believe they deserve respect. However, it just didn't feel like a rom-com would fit the sentimentalities of Celine Song. But what do I know? We only have Past Lives from her, so that was bold of me to judge that she couldn't deliver on her sophomore film. And Materialist is proof point that you can give 10 different chefs the same exact ingredients, but they're gonna cook completely differently. And the dish that Celine Song crafts with all the rom-com materials she poured into Materialists make one delicious dish. Welcome back to my channel. My name is Emily, or La Movie Mija. I'm a part-time filmmaker, full-time movie lover, and this is my review of Materialists. Thank you so much for checking out my video. I'm going to do my very best to keep this first part of the video spoiler free before getting into some analysis later on, but all those chapters will be marked below. Let's get into it. A young New York City matchmaker's lucrative business gets complicated as she finds herself torn between the perfect match and her imperfect ex. The film is directed by Celine Song and stars Dakota Johnson, Pedro Pascal, Chris Evans, and Zoe Winters. Materialist being marketed as a rom-com is a little bit of a catfish move, but I don't think it's an entire miss. I don't think it's entirely misleading or like ill-intentioned. I do like the fact that it is marketed as a rom-com because there's an element of a surprise once you watch the movie. It's definitely more romantic drama, comedy, dramedy. There is some comedic elements. There is a lot of romance and talk about romance, but it's not the rom-com that you and I both know. It does have all of those same elements, like I mentioned. The formula for the film is there, the way the characters are built out. Even, when you look at it in very layman's terms, it's beautiful people in beautiful places doing extravagant things. That is that layer of rom-com escapism that has become synonymous with the genre. And this movie has that, but it also has a layer of pessimism that I think is par for the course with anyone who is engaged in the modern dating landscape of the 21st century. Because if you are someone you know has dealt with the apps or has tried to date in today's world, 1, I'm sorry. 2, you got this. I believe in you. And 3, it feels refreshing to see someone actually approach romance and it feel authentically romantic, but also have a little bit of pessimistic examination of, why someone would even be into you in the first place. Asking the questions of what is marriage anyway? Is it a love contract that you make with somebody who you can't live without, who you want to be with till death do us part, for richer or poorer, in sickness and health, for better or worse? Or is it a contractual agreement that is the merging of assets? And Materialist isn't afraid to look at the modern dating landscape and, really call out the commodification that dating has become. It's love versus the algorithm. It's saying the quiet parts of dating out loud in a way that it doesn't feel like a romantic comedy. Those realities are not funny. There are a lot of dark parts about dating and romance, especially in a capitalistic society that we have to confront. But there's never any part of this movie that feels accusatory. It never feels like it's looking down on somebody for either believing in romance or for looking at marriage and building a life together through a materialistic lens. So Celine Song is taking all of these elements about love and relationship and marriage, and they're all very familiar tropes that we have seen in other romantic comedies, but they feel so unique. And some of the ways that they feel unique are the dialogue. The dialogue is such a unique Celine Song stamp. I just love the way that these characters feel so emotionally present. The way that we got from A to B and the dialogue, the conversations that these characters have is so rich. You just want to stay in those moments for as long as possible. And then you have the sound design that adds to the romance of it all too, because it's a crowded restaurant, but everything, the colors, the lights, the sound are all turned down so we can focus on our main characters. It's a very over-stylized, over-romanticized idea of what a conversation between you and someone you love or getting to know would be like, but it it is so beautiful, and I just found myself leaning into this film and being so entranced by it. Even though I knew these familiar beats, some of it reminded me of Sex and the City or When Harry Met Sally or You've Got Mail. Like, there was a lot of Meg Ryan, Nora Ephron, like, little shout outs throughout the film. And even though they felt familiar, everything through Celine Song's dialogue and the way that she presents these scenes just felt so fresh and engaging. I want to take a second to talk about the casting because I do think it is pretty brilliant. One person who is not part of the main cast but is a pivotal character later on in the film is Zoe Winters as Sophie, one of Lucy's clients. She is remarkable in this film, and there's a few pointed moments that just really took my breath away, and I was so surprised by her. I have not seen her in many other things, at least I don't think I have, and I think she was just one of those like standout moments in this film belonged to her. Pedro Pascal and Chris Evans are so well placed in this film. I think Pedro Pascal as the suave, like perfect, like wealthy, beautiful, like has all the makings of the perfect man, or what Lucy would call a whale. No, or what Lucy would call a unicorn. He is suave to the max. He is so Pedro Pascal in his most charming form. And I think it is such meta casting to have someone as perfect and beautiful and as charming as him be this role. And then opposite Pedro Pascal, you have Chris Evans as John, Lucy's past lover who comes back into her life. And he is a lot more rough around the edges. And it's Chris Evans as I haven't seen him since Cellular. Like, he has been Steve Rogers for so long. It's really nice and refreshing to see him with his Boston accent, a little bit more scruffy and rough. And he doesn't have to be the perfect pretty boy that he was for so long. It was really nice to see him in this role. And I think he played so well opposite Dakota Johnson. And Dakota Johnson, first things first, she has never looked better. Her wardrobe throughout this film was so stunning. Katina Danabasis was the costume designer, and there's this blue dress that Dakota Johnson wears for some pivotal parts of the film, and it is so stunning. It definitely felt like, I know Joe Wright, his Atonement film is on the list of Celine Song's movie syllabus, and I'm pretty sure that this blue dress moment was like their equivalent of Keira Knightley's green dress moment in that film. She's never looked better. It was stunning. So she's never looked better, and I felt like she was so right for this role. I don't think that everyone had chemistry in the sizzling sense. Like, they had great like soul peering into each other, examining one another chemistry, but not like spicy, fiery tension chemistry. You know what I mean? And I feel like Dakota Johnson having these like deep conversations with Pedro Pascal's Harry and Chris Evans' John they played off each other very well. I didn't feel that fire. I didn't feel that heat, but I don't know if that was necessarily the point for this film. I don't know if they were trying to manufacture some spice between them. I mean, everyone was just objectively sexy. So that could also be something that people who love rom-coms will be yearning for, is a little bit more spice, because this movie doesn't have that. It's a little more mild, a little bit more of a metaphorical, heady examination of love and relationships, not so much of the carnal type. Overall, I found this movie to be a compelling follow-up to Past Lives. It is not the same kind of soul-crushing, like personal, intimate examination of love and relationships like that film was, but it still has its own merits. And as a genre-defined romantic modern masterpiece that does deserve your attention on a big screen, it's shot in 35 millimeter. It's beautiful to look at. I think it's really commendable what Celine Song was able to pull off with this. She takes all the familiar elements and beats of a romantic comedy, and she gave us something truly unique, very visually, aesthetically stunning, and takes us on a journey through these really emotionally available people having really deep conversations about the fact that you can't separate material things and the act of marriage. And maybe we shouldn't have to, because marriage and material things are one and the same. If you made it this far in this video, I hope you consider liking and subscribing to my channel. I post one new movie review for you every single week. And if you want to hear more movie reviews and news and personal insights from me, you can follow me at Movie Mija on all the things. All right, let's get into some spoiler territory. If you haven't seen the film, make sure you save this video and come back later after you watch the film, because we're going to talk about who Lucy ends up with and how she got there. All right, let's start with who Lucy ends up with. Lucy ends up with Spoiler check. Lucy ends up with Chris Evans' character, John, and that you could have seen that coming from 100 miles away. It doesn't matter where we got, it matters how we got there. And I think the way that Celine Song just presents this like journey of self-discovery for Lucy is so touching. So John is somebody that she dated in her early 20s, and we see a flashback of them fighting over trying to find a parking spot. And if that's not one of the most relatable things I've ever seen, like, Celine, get out of my personal journal. It's not the fact that John is poor that Lucy can't love him. It's the fact that his financial insecurity has led to some detrimental effects on their relationship, like him not being able to be considerate enough to plan a special date for their anniversary. Because he's not considerate, he isn't able to take the time to make a cost-effective decision to build out a nice anniversary date for Lucy. And so it's not so much that he is financially insecure, it's the fact that his insecurity as a man, his inattention to detail, his lack of motivation is what causes him to be a bad partner. So in that regard, his inability to have focus and be successful and support himself, let alone a partner, is making it so that it's harder for him to have a loving relationship with Lucy. And that's where the conversation about classism starts to come into play for this film. And I found it really interesting to think about the idea of a materialist. Like, who is a materialist? And I got to thinking about how Pedro Pascal's Harry is so nonchalant about material things. When he asks Lucy what she likes about him, she says she likes how he picks up the bill, specifically the swift and single motion in which he signs the bill and gives it off. And it's the confidence that comes with it. It's the promise that he can take care of her that comes with it. It's the untangible or intangible things that come with the idea that somebody could provide for you in that way that she enjoys. So again, it's those intangible qualities that make the man, and it has that chicken and egg conversation. What comes first, the money or the man? And that conversation of man or money, what comes first, doesn't just start and end with John. It also applies to Harry, because we later find out that Harry had a little procedure done to help build his confidence so that he can be seen as a more valuable person. And, law of attraction, he's better looking, he's taller, he's getting promotions, he's getting girls, he's getting money now. And I love the way that that was set up too. Like, Chekhov's knee scar was placed, and they had that little seed of doubt when she first saw his scar in bed. And I was like, that's going to come up later. I wonder what little imperfection that must be. And so for Harry, he cannot buy love, but he can buy new legs in which make him more attractive and increase his chances of finding love. Because we see these montages throughout the film of people's incredibly contradictory boxes that they're assigning for their perfect partner, especially when it came to the men wanting to find somebody who felt like a true adult, someone who has watched a lot of old movies and is very well spoken and is a woman who has lived, but she cannot be older than 29. And 29 is pushing it. It's those insane contradictions of people trying to find somebody who doesn't exist. And I love that Lucy confronts one of her clients, telling them that she can't build that perfect person that they're describing. And the way that people are offering their non-negotiables is very much like they're ordering a sandwich, and they want these exact ingredients in that way. They're offsetting the act of engaging in romance to a matchmaker like Lucy, whose job is it to look at everybody as numbers and figures and then find a perfect match. It's my understanding that Celine Song had a 6-month stint as a matchmaker, and that's where she drew a lot of inspiration from. And so it's no surprise that she was able to fully capture this very clinical way that matchmakers are forced to look at individuals in order to make good matches. But it's so jarring to think that that's how we engage with dating a lot of the time too. We look at all these numbers and figures, and we crunch our own numbers constantly to find who is going to be a good romantic match. And it seems so contradictory to formulate all of these different algorithms that help you determine who you're going to fall in love with, when love itself is an intangible thing that can't be explained. So Lucy ending up with John is kind of maddening. And Harry is the perfect person. And I'm being very biased because it's Pedro Pascal. Who are you spending forever with, Pedro Pascal or Chris Evans? it's Pedro Pascal. He's got the money, he's got the looks, he's got the charm, but something about their relationship, even though they look good on paper, it just doesn't click. She doesn't feel the romance. And I don't think just because her old boyfriend John came back into her life that she is compelled to seek him out. We see in the film when she experiences a traumatic event with her client, finding out that her client was assaulted, she doesn't open up to Harry. She calls back to John, somebody who knows her in a deeper level than she feels like she has with John. And that little slice of the story that harkens back to past lives in which Lucy had a past life with John before she became this like hotshot matchmaker that she is now. Before everything was so pretty and polished, we have like this like shaky cam-esque scene with them on the street yelling at each other in the middle of New York City on their anniversary. But let's talk about that traumatic event because I do think that it is something that it, statistically shows happens often enough that we should have an honest conversation about the risk of assault happening in the dating world. I think the heartbreaking thing about that experience that compounds it is the fact that her workplace and her boss admit to the fact that this happens. It's a fact of life. It's something that they just have to accept and they can't blame themselves and they have to move on. But Lucy can't. And that I felt was an interesting turn for her character to become so fixated on wanting to, I thought, apologize to her client. I thought she was trying to seek her out or seek Sophie out so she could say she was sorry. But when she finally met up with Sophie, she didn't apologize. She kind of was just trying to justify how the guy that she set her up with was good on paper. She was just trying to like not take responsibility for what happened. And I don't think she's necessarily responsible, like firsthand responsible for what happened. But I do think that Lucy has this realization that she is part of this dating machine that has commodified the way that we look at romance and has taken away that ability to know somebody. Even though you can know all of their numbers, you can't truly assess if someone is a good person or not just based on those numbers. And I think that really takes Lucy's world and spins it on its head. And from that point forward, I feel like I knew she was going to be ending up with John because she realizes that those numbers, they just don't matter. The math that she was so beholden to, the algorithm that she trusted so boldly, broke down in front of her, and it shattered her worldview enough to send her back to the arms of John. And I think it's ridiculous to assign this to broke boy propaganda. I do not think that her ending up with John is broke boy propaganda. For those that don't know, broke boy propaganda is exactly what it sounds like. It's this idea of selling the broke, starving artist type to a woman and saying that you're going to be happy with him because he's passionate even though he can't provide or he's not financially stable. But in John's case, those things are true. He is financially insecure and it's a little worrisome that he has so many roommates and, there's some orange flags. Haha, but I feel like that's when the script is turning the mirror on us, the audience, and saying, hey, we know you want her to end up with Harry. Are you being materialistic about it? Am I? Am I falling for rich boy propaganda? But this is where I think the movie lets us know that that's not the case, because John, in his final big sweeping emotive speech to Lucy, is promising a life that requires him to self-actualize. He has to make a change in his life in order to be worthy of Lucy. He needs to fix his numbers so that his marriage material presentation more suitably matches hers. And I think that's kind of beautiful. I think that having motivation and self-worth is one of the central themes of the story. This idea that you have to know your own worth and your own value. you have to have self-respect in order to gain the love and build a life with somebody else. You can't have a partner who isn't willing to put in the work and invest in themselves. It's going to be so draining on you to uphold them and try to see them all the way through. So John's sweeping declaration of love to her is also a promise of his own self-valuation, how he's going to boost his numbers because he's going to take care of himself. And in turn, him taking care of himself is going to take care of Lucy. So who are the materialists? I want to say we all are. I think we're all materialists, but I think this movie is saying that that's okay. It's a very optimistic understanding of our inability to separate the two. It's that chicken and egg conversation of what came first and reconciling with the fact that we'll never know what came first, but we do know that both things exist now. And as much as the materialistic aspects of dating exist, I think this film also affirms wholly that love also exists. And Lucy, just like the rest of us, is just trying to find out what she values the most. And as it turns out, she values love and connection over everything else, and that's why she chooses John. But there you go, that is my review and analysis of the movie Materialists. It has the right balance of pessimism and romance that you would expect from a modern romantic movie set in New York City. I really enjoyed what it had to say and the conversation it's having about the modern dating landscape. I appreciate the character studies and the dialogue and the very romantic ways that she moves the camera around these beautiful people in these beautiful places. But I want to hear from you. What did you think about this film? Do you think it's a solid follow-up to Past Lives? Are you excited for what Celine Song does next? Let me know in the comments below. All right, that's all from me. Thank you so much for watching my video. I'll see you next time. Bye.